Welcome to the Rogue Reader Podcast. My name is James, and I love reading Star Wars books and explaining them to my wife.
It's the way how you said it. My name is Priscilla. I am the wife of my husband, James. I don't know how to say that. And I am an enjoyer of books, and I think I'm really going to enjoy this explainers. It's kind of late, and I don't feel great.
I hope this is out on Valentine's Day. That's the plan. If
it's not,
it's still a Valentine's Day celebration no matter when it comes out. But yes, so last Valentine's Day we covered the Courtship of Princess Leia, which was the Legends version of how Han and Leia got married. Now we're going to cover the Disney canon version of how they got married with the Princess and the Scoundrel, which is right here. Since this is a semi-recent book, I'll just give a spoiler warning. We're going to go through the whole book. And just so you can see, here is what it looks like. This is the cover.
Sorry, I'm allergic to cuteness.
Okay.
It's so cute. Too bad the first book kind of ruins this because it feels like it's gonna be a doozy.
Barnes & Noble. We love Barnes & Noble. We're not sponsored or anything, but every book has a little poster that comes with it.
Which you're not going to take off, are you?
I used to. They're double-sided.
Oh my gosh.
So it shows like Han and Leia, like a promo picture of them like
Is
kissing.
that a picture?
Yeah, that's from
art?
that's picture. That's from the set. And it's just a bigger version of the cover on the other side.
I love that.
I used to take them off, and then when I realized they were doing it with every book, I was like, you know what? It's just better to keep it in here.
This is random, but have you heard about like reverse like dust jackets?
No.
So what people are doing, especially like small time artists, they'll create their own version of a dust jacket of like hardcover books, especially famous ones, like for example, Sarah J. Maas's. And they'll make it where, of course, it's like their own interpretation of the front and back. And then if you reverse the dust jacket, it's like a whole new illustration. But I think that would be really cool one day for Barnes & Noble to implement like a little creativity and like if you want to switch it up. But yeah, I still think that's really beautiful.
I forgot to look up the cover artist, but I will put it here in post floating somewhere, whoever the cover artist is. All right, well, this book was released in August of 2022, so it's not even 3 years old. It's 2 years old, about. It was revealed on Valentine's Day in 2022, and they revealed it with a really cute save the date for the wedding of Han and Leia in The Princess and the Scoundrel.
No way. That's really cute.
Yeah.
I love that. Incoming transmission.
Yeah, this was...
Where was it posted?
On Star Wars' website.
Star Wars?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I love that.
So that was really cute. The author is Beth Revis, and I don't know any of her work. I'm going to be honest. I checked out her, like, what other books she does. It looks like she does, like, both teen, young adult, like, sci-fi and fantasy books. I think she does, like, historical fantasy, and it does look like she centers them, a lot of them around romance. I haven't read them, though, so I can't be sure, but that's just kind of what my first impression was. This isn't her first Star Wars book. She actually wrote the young adult novel Rebel Rising, which was about young Jyn from Rogue One and her backstory. She also wrote some short stories and From a Certain Point of View, and she wrote she was a writer in one of the Forces of Destiny comic with Padme and Ahsoka. I did look up some interviews. She seems like a really cool person, but like just to get some background, she did say Leia was her hero growing up, and she even has a brother named Luke, so that works out. Her introduction into Star Wars was my introduction to Star Wars, Young Jedi Knights. In fact, she has the exact volumes I have with Jason and Jaina. That was her introduction to Star Wars too, so that's cool. She would rewatch the original trilogy over and over again, and for writing this book, and would take notes specifically on like what Han would do, what Leia would do, their body language, all that stuff. She would just do that over and over again, and she would practice the lines of dialogue out loud with her husband for the book.
Oh, that's actually really cute.
She said there was this magical moment where the book was done and she had it, but it hadn't been released yet. And she felt like she was the only one who had this story, and she was like the sole biographer of them. Just like she said, it was this like magical little moment just before the book came out.
I always forget. Is she Queen Leia?
Princess? No.
She's never queen.
She was a princess. Her mother was queen, but then the planet got destroyed, so she never got to really be queen. Because her parents were still alive when the planet was destroyed. So before we get into the summary, just one thing I wanted to say is something I like about this book is that every chapter switches perspective. So it'll be Leia, and then it'll switch to Han, and it'll just keep going back and forth.
Oh, those are my favorite dual point of view.
And they're short chapters, which I love. I prefer short chapters because it feels like you read a lot more. It's okay.
If you can hear that, it is our guinea pig, Cappuccino. Our daughter is randomly asking for attention, so sorry about that.
So I'm just gonna get started right into the plot. The book starts right at the end of episode 6, so Return of the Jedi. Basically after the celebration scene and the funeral pyre for Darth Vader, all of that. Luke goes to talk to Leia, and he wants to tell her Vader's last words. Basically tell her how Vader was like, tell your sister you were right about me, being good all along. But she refuses. She's like, I don't want to hear it. Like, I'm not forgiving Darth Vader.
As she should.
Mm-hmm.
She has every right to. He's done some terrible things, and especially to their own mother.
And tortured her.
Yeah. Very much so. Go on.
That's just kind of the prologue, but then as it gets into chapter 1, Han is there, and he's talking with Leia about some upcoming mission or something. This is like the next day. Mm-hmm. And he's thinking about how he lost a year of his life when he was frozen in carbonite, and he doesn't want to lose any more, and he keeps thinking about Leia. He just proposes to her, just like that, right then and there, like out of nowhere. And it's in the back of the book. Here, let me read it. So she's like just talking to him about, okay, this is the next mission coming up, and we're going to do this and this, and then he just goes, I want you. And she goes, me? And she looked around. Although the base below had been bustling with activity, this part of the village was remarkably quiet. She goes, for what? And he says, forever.
Oh my God.
That's like the gist, you get it. But then, he tells her, marry me. Like just right then and there.
Of course she's like, okay.
Yeah,
yes.
She says yes. See how simple it could have been compared to the Courtship of Princess Leia, where they spent years, and even then they could not tell each other, like, they want to get married.
Yeah, that was like toxic.
This was the second day after the movie. And it could have just been just like that, just propose right then and there. Leia decides, though, that she needs to tell Han who her biological father is, because he doesn't know that Darth Vader is her father. Leia is worried that when people find out, how it's going to affect how they view her. So she tells him, and he takes it in, but he's basically just like, okay, like, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't affect how I view you. I'm not one to judge people based on their past or family. So he's just totally okay with it and, like, supportive. He runs off to tell Chewie and Lando, and then Luke arrives, and he seems to know just what happened, and he congratulates Leia, and he tells Leia, like, of course Han wouldn't care about our father. Like, you had nothing to worry about. He's one of the good ones. But Leia's concerned because she feels there's so many options for the future coming up. She feels like she has to choose her future. And she also feels like if she chooses love now, it almost feels like she's denying that the war is still going to continue. She doesn't feel like she has the right to be happy right now, basically, because there's still a war going on.
Yeah, that's fair. That's trauma.
And Luke also wants her to go train with him to be a Jedi. And she wants him to come with her to help form the new government. And they both want different things. But she does not want to go with him to be a Jedi. She doesn't want to get closer to the power that made Vader evil. That's what she's thinking.
No wonder. I've always asked you, like, why she's never ventured in that. That adds a very
She's scared.
Layer.
She's scared to do it. Mm-hmm. And she decides that she's going to stay happy. She's going to stay with Han and keep doing her own thing. And she knows Luke will probably go off and do his own. The rebels have a briefing on how to move forward because the war isn't over yet. They need to secure their allies, get some more fuel, and they're worried about the Empire sending assassins after their key leaders, including Leia. Han is worried he's not going to get much time to spend with her now that they're getting married before being shipped off to their next mission, essentially. Leia and Mon Mothma, you remember Mon Mothma? She's like the leader of the rebellion.
Hell yeah. I remember her.
They're talking of like what upcoming missions are coming up and that there's been some bounties placed on them. And Leia tells Mon about her getting married, and Mon tells her, your parents would be proud of you. But Leia's kind of sad because there's an Alderaanian tradition where your mother puts this sword on you. It's called the Sword of Rindon. They put it around your belt, and usually the father will like kiss you on the forehead, and she's kind of sad that she's not going to get to experience that.
She doesn't have either, both her biological and adoptive.
Yeah. They're
Ugh.
but Leia says they're gonna get married here on Endor, and then it's just gonna be right back to business. No honeymoon or anything. They're just gonna get right back to work.
That's fair. Well, she's a working lady.
She is. Meanwhile, Lando is throwing Han a big party. He's basically throwing Han a bachelor party, during which there's this nice scene where he thoughtfully offers Han to borrow one of his jackets for the wedding, and it's a jacket that was made on Alderaan. He's like, so he thinks Leia will appreciate that. That's a nice little gesture.
That is.
They try to keep the party limited, but the Ewoks end up finding out, and they end up crashing the party and causing all sorts of chaos.
Bro.
C-3PO also comes with them, and he's offended that he had to hear about the wedding secondhand, and he wasn't invited to the party either. And he's like, I've been an important part of your life too, and I'm a protocol droid. I'd be great for serving at this party. So he's like really offended that Han didn't invite him.
Well, he's offended, but he's still like, but I'm coming, right?
Yeah, he shows up with the Ewoks. Luke arrives too, and Han starts to think to himself how crazy it was that he was ever jealous of Luke when it came to Leia. And then he remembers the kiss they had on Hoth, Luke and Leia, when they kissed. So the author acknowledges it in the book, and I love this. And they're kind of quiet, and Han tells Luke, he's like, remember back on Hoth and the base, that kiss? And Luke goes, yeah, let's never speak of it again.
They didn't know.
Yeah, but the fact that I love that they acknowledge it. That the author put it in the book and it was approved. The Ewoks end up causing a fire when they knock a torch into some booze, and Han and Leia decide the Ewoks need to go.
They made a Molotov. Oh my god!
The author talked about in an interview how she felt like the Ewoks are party animals, and how interesting it is that they live in houses made of wood, and she would not put it past them to just burn it all down, and they'd be laughing about it.
Not just laughing, they'll probably go burn some more of the houses.
So because C-3PO is their god, Luke suggests that C-3PO leave and the Ewoks will follow him. And C-3PO goes, he's offended that they're like, you should leave.
He's some protocol droid. He should know better.
But he does leave and it works. The Ewoks follow him. It switches back to Leia's perspective. Mon Mothma gives Leia some time off, but Leia's using it to keep working on rebel things. So she's not really taking a break. And Mon Mothma just basically catches her and makes her to go take a break. She runs into this rebel officer who suggested that she creates a message telling the galaxy of her wedding. She said the rebel officer tells her it's symbolic. It's a union to announce the birth of the new government. But she doesn't want to do that just yet. And she just ends up walking out into the forest. She's kind of walking aimlessly, thinking things over. She ends up smelling smoke, and she ends up walking into where Darth Vader's funeral pyre is. So she walks out on the scene.
No.
This might be one of the best scenes in the book. I think this was the author's favorite too. But basically you get to read her thoughts about Darth Vader and what she thinks about the whole thing coming face to face with it. She actually picks up his mask and she's looking at it, and she puts it back down, and she's basically thinking that she's happy that he's now dust beneath her shoes. And when she picks up the helmet, she looks at it and she tells it, I hate you. And she has all this anger, and she yells at the helmet, you are not my father. And then she kind of throws it down. And that's enough to put her at peace, actually. So she knows her parents were Bail and Brea Organa. They were her real parents, and they always will be. And Luke may have made peace with Vader, but that doesn't mean she has to. She says family is chosen, basically. And they actually had a new comic that just came out recently, the Battle of Jakku comic, and it references a bunch of things, but they actually show a little bit of this scene in the comic. The dialogue isn't the same, it plays out a little bit differently, but it's just, you can kind of get an interesting perspective of seeing her with the helmet. It's kind of nice.
A good illustration.
Yeah. I also thought it was interesting that the author was talking about some of the behind the scenes of writing the book. And she had this amazing scene of Leia picking up the helmet, but of course for potential continuity reasons or future story reasons, she had to have Leia put the helmet back down because we know it ends up with Kylo Ren later.
I was just going to say that.
She's like, I have to leave that open for if a future author tells that story. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, in case they have to find out how their kid got the helmet.
The wedding day arrives, and it's happening at this really great, this big temple that the Ewoks built into a giant tree.
When did they do that?
I think the temple's been there.
You said they built it. I thought you meant, they built it
not just for the wedding. No, it's been there. It's a temple that's been there. But I wouldn't put it past them. Everything is decorated there's just flowers everywhere, and it's this really beautiful scene. And Han is waiting for his cue to walk out into the stage, take his place. And he's wearing the jacket from Alderaan that Lando lent him. Otherwise, though, he's wearing just his normal scruffy clothes else other than that. It's time for him to walk out, but he's super nervous and he finds that he can't move. Chewie is with him. Chewie just grabs him and starts dragging him out down the aisle. And then
no
Han's
cold
like,
feet here.
all right, I'm going. You don't have to threaten to carry me. And just as he says that, the curtain like gets revealed and there he is. And then he like kind of puts on a smile and he's like, oh yeah. And he just starts walking out. He takes his spot and Leia enters and he says to him, basically to Han's perspective, the whole room just disappeared and it was just him and her as soon as she walked in.
I almost want to cry. That's so cute.
She's wearing a metal green She's wearing a metal green gown embroidered with flowers. Her sides are kind of open and she has these laced white fur boots that go up to her knees. Her hair is loose and she's got kind of like 2 braids keeping the locks out of her face. It is the wedding dress that's on the cover, but I do have I found a full picture of it.
Is it not the cover on the picture book?
Yes, it's that too. But if you want a full picture of the cover art, that's her wedding dress.
Oh, they should have put that on there.
And a really nice touch, Luke is officiating the wedding, which I think is really nice. This doesn't matter, but I was questioning. I was like, is Jedi like a legal religion where like he can officiate, or did he have to go get a license real quickly online?
I don't think they care. They just
maybe they don't. Yeah.
They just they symbolically married. Therefore, like you can't. Who
knows how it works?
What office are you going to go to get divorced on that planet?
They are the new government. I guess Mon Mothma could have been like, all right, Jedi can officiate weddings. That's the rule now. And yeah.
And then the Ewoks can mitigate and be their lawyers for divorce.
Well, that's the thing. Before he can even start, the Ewoks start protesting that C-3PO is their god and he needs to do he needs to officiate the wedding.
Oh no!
And Han's like, hell no. And
not in the temple.
They basically have C-3PO tell the Ewoks that he will appoint Luke to do the wedding just to quiet them down. Luke gives like kind of a speech, and during it, he does give a moment of silence for those that cannot be here. And he says, no one is ever truly gone. In moments of love and joy, you'll always feel their presence. They're all sitting there and they're closing their eyes. And Leia, all of a sudden, she feels something on her belt. And she's like, what's that? And then she realizes she's feeling the weight of the sword from her mother. And suddenly she feels these bristles on her forehead. And she ended up feeling the kiss from her father. And I know.
My goodness. The Force?
It's not explained, but like she feels her mother in that moment of silence put the sword on, and she feels her father kiss her forehead. And it made me like tear up.
I cry so hard.
And when she opens her eyes, Luke is staring at her. He seems to have sensed it too, and he kind of says it quietly, so only Han and Leia can hear it. But he says, no one is ever truly gone.
Oh my gosh! Yes.
I know. I really would have loved to have seen Han's perspective. I wonder if he felt anything, but it's not his perspective. This chapter.
Yeah, to him, he's just like, she's beautiful. That's just all he's thinking about.
One of the head Ewoks ends up interrupting the ceremony, he takes Han and Leia's hands and he ties their fingers together, their ring fingers, with this plant. And then he grabs their hands and he pulls them apart. And the plant, when it rips, it leaks a sap and it hardens it and it turns it into their wedding rings.
Okay,
which is really cool.
Ruin it.
No.
Like, I object.
He basically made their wedding rings in the ceremony where they tie their fingers together and yank it apart, and it creates this like ring out of the plant.
That's awesome.
The Ewoks start chanting and they're banging their hands and just like y'all yelling, and then Han and Leia kiss, and all of a sudden all the flowers in the room come alive and they fly out, and it turns out they weren't flowers, they were insects. They're called flower flyers, and they're these little insects, and they float all around the room. They're like these golden insects, and they're kind of, the way it's described in the book, they kind of just like, they come out quickly, but then they kind of like float like around the room just like a little bit. So it's this beautiful scene. This is the part where I have to interject. And when I was in the middle of like creating the script, I realized that they only like just recently, a couple of months ago, made a picture book of the wedding. So this is Star Wars: Someone Who Loves You.
We drove to the Barnes & Noble real quick, and I think it was the last one, right?
It was, yeah. But it shows scenes of their wedding illustrated. This is a really cute book, basically about Han and Leia explaining what they think love is, and it shows the beginning and like their wedding. And you can see some of the wedding scenes, which I took pictures of. So this is inside the tree, what it looks like. Mm-hmm. I thought this is cute because we don't see this in the book because it's Han's perspective when he walks out, but you see Leia, like Luke gives her a big hug before walking out with her, which is cute. This is her walking down the aisle. It doesn't something a little different. It looks like Luke isn't quite officiating. Well, it's a weird perspective, but there they are walking down the aisle.
One thing to note too that I enjoyed, the way you
Another
can tell
part of the
the
cover.
different perspective. That's beautiful. The writing is in cursive if it's in Leia's perspective, but then it's like a type font
For Han. I mean,
It's really cool.
it's cute. There they are with their hands together and their
As they
golden
should.
rings. And it looks a little more fluid here, but this is like when all the flowers come alive.
That's beautiful. They're just basically butterflies.
Here, I don't think they're. My interpretation of reading the book is they're not quite butterflies. They're more
weren't.
they're more like circular, floating around. But this is this
Like,
interpretation.
Okay, like fireflies. I
Yeah.
guess.
So everyone is celebrating, and Mon Mothma and Leia start having a conversation. And Leia's like, "So what are we working on tomorrow?" And Mon's like, "Well, I'm going to be working. You're going on your honeymoon." And Leia's trying to fight her on this. She's like, "There's too much that needs to be done." And Mon says it's important for the galaxy's image for her to celebrate. You have to make the galaxy think that we won and that you can spend time having a honeymoon. Like, put them at ease.
Ooh, that's not what she thinks though.
She says if there's no celebration, that might tell everyone that the fight isn't over yet. And she offers Leia to go on a star cruise with a set timeline. They'll be back within a certain amount of date. They can go back to work. It's from Mon's home world of Chandrila. Everything will be covered, all expenses. There'll be media there, so you can present a nice face to the media, still feel like you're doing stuff, but you'll still get to have your honeymoon. When it switches back to Han, there's an interaction during the party. I like between Han and Lando. Like, Lando's asking Han, where are you going to take her for the honeymoon? And Han's basically just saying, we'll just fly somewhere in the Falcon. And Lando's like, she's a princess, Han. Like, you need to treat her like one. And Han basically is like, hey, all we need is a bed, and maybe not even that.
Oh, is this a young adult novel?
No, this is an adult novel.
Okay.
Mon meets with Han after and tells him the same thing she told Leia about the Star Cruise. Basically tells Han, like, can you convince Leia to go on this? And Han's not quite he doesn't really want to do, like, this big whole cruise thing. But Mon's like, this is probably the only way you'll ever convince Leia to go on a honeymoon with you if you do this. So he agrees. And she says, it's going to end at a nice beach planet. Like, there'll be some fancy stuff there you'll enjoy. There is another little scene I like where Han tells Chewbacca that while they're out on their honeymoon, like, go do something to the Falcon, like, change something so it feels like home to Leia too, not just us. Like, do something. But he basically does convince Leia to go on the honeymoon, basically telling her, like, what, you expected to go back to work tomorrow? Like, this means something. This has to mean something. Like, things have changed. This is a new beginning. And she agrees, and they run off to the Falcon in that moment to go on the honeymoon right away.
So do they have a plan of where to go?
Mon Mothma basically has it all set up for them. They just have to
going
go
to that. Okay.
And of course, there's a funny part where they run into the Falcon all excited, and then it won't start as, like, Han's trying to turn it on, and then, like, they just have to hit it real quickly and it starts. But like it always happens in the movies. They arrive at Mon Mothma's homeworld, Chandrila, and get ready to board a shuttle to the Star Cruise, and it's the Halcyon. Do you know the Halcyon? I'm curious. Do you know this?
It sounds like house.
This is what the Star Cruise looks like.
Okay.
So I did not pick up on this the first time I read this book. This is the Star Cruise from Disney's when they did the apartment. Remember when Disney did their Galactic Star Cruise that you could book and you would spend time on a ship pretending like you're in Star Wars?
Oh my goodness. Yes. It's that hotel, right?
Yeah, the hotel, which it's shut down now. It didn't last. But that's what this is. So this is kind of like a little tie-in to that place. I will say right off the bat, it does not feel like a tie-in whatsoever. And I didn't even pick up on it the first time I read the book.
Yeah.
But the author, she didn't, I don't know if she ever got to go. At the time she wrote the book, she didn't get to go on the cruise. I don't know if she ever did. But she had all the floor plans. So she was able to, like, make sure everything kind of fit in place where it was.
Wow, what amazing work. Good job on you.
Mm-hmm. They say goodbye to Chewbacca, and Leia tells Chewie specifically, thank you for always being there for me. I'm never going to forget that. And Han is kind of confused. He's like, when was Chewie ever there for her? And then he's like, oh, that's right. That whole year I was frozen and, like, she was by herself. Like, this book is kind of about him coming to terms with that too, everything he missed. Because it's only been like a couple days or weeks since he woke up, essentially, and and he lost a year of his life and all these changes.
Yeah.
They're getting ready to board the cruise, And Han sees all these kids playing and smiling, and he thinks about what the future is going to look like for him and Leia, if maybe kids will be involved in that too. So he's thinking about a family already. They board and they do meet the captain, Dicto, I think is his name. And Leia looks around at all the rich people attending this cruise, and she wonders to herself how many of them would have gone to this same celebration if the Empire had won instead of the rebellion. Basically, how many of these people do really care, like what had happened? It probably would have been no difference to them.
Just questioning their morals.
Yeah. Han is ready to take Leia to their suite like right away, but everyone wants to meet and greet her, of course, and a father approaches with his like little girl, and the little girl tells Leia that her mother was at Yavin, like the Battle of the Death Star, which kind of like melts Han's heart because like obviously like the mother died there. And Leia tells Han go on without her, and she kind of stays and talks to the little girl. Han ends up just kind of exploring the ship a little bit, and he finds this Holosa back table, but he doesn't want to play because it's just for fun. There's no stakes in the game, and he wants to gamble with money.
Uh-oh.
So he decides to wonder if there really is, if maybe like he really fits into this high and fancy like place that he's at.
You mean after just 5 minutes being on this ship, he's like having a
Well,
crisis?
there's a little bit of time. It's not too long, but yeah, he didn't want to go in the first place. This is not like his type of thing, this big fancy thing.
True.
He's doing it so they can have time together, and because it's the only way Leia would have agreed to go. And he's figuring out, how do I fit in not only to this life, but this is also the life Leia has. So in a way, this is the life he's going to be part of too.
He
So
just feels out of place.
yeah, he feels out of place. So Leia has a couple interesting encounters on the ship. One man she's talking to is asking her, is the Emperor really dead? Because I saw my uncle told me he saw the Emperor on Coruscant.
Oh, no. Is he one of those Well, hold on. I can't say that phrase, actually.
Oh.
He's a telltaler.
Yeah, he
Loves fantasy.
we know the type. And Leia is like, yeah, of course, he's dead. There were witnesses. And then the guy's like, yeah, of course there were, rebel witnesses. But my uncle saw him. My uncle saw him on Coruscant.
Oh my God. If you're that person, like, I don't like you.
Well, I like what Leia's comeback. Leia goes, haven't you heard? We're not rebels anymore. We won. Like, and then there's another encounter she has where she overhears this older woman saying her son was on the Death Star and on a track to promotion, and her family got her this cruise to help her deal with her grief of her son dying on the Death Star. And then she's like, but now she's here, like the gall of this woman to be here who basically killed my son. How dare she show up?
Your son
taking a vacation after everything she did.
Your son killed planets of people on them.
It's still interesting because yes, this is a woman who accepted the Empire as normal, and she lost her son. And maybe she doesn't know all the evil things that was going on. It's just interesting perspective that Leia is coming into contact with all these different things.
Well, that's going to come with the territory.
Mm-hmm. Han ends up getting a tip on a private sabacc game in the engine room where there's real stakes, so he decides to go join.
Oh, no, he's... hold on, I can already tell what's going to happen. He's probably going to be, like, caught by paparazzi, or, like, he's going to cause a scene because, like, someone got mad. But anyway, go on.
I'll read what happens. I will say something that's also kind of annoying him. None of the paparazzi are paying any attention to him. Like it's like he doesn't care. Yeah, it's like he doesn't matter whatsoever. It's just Leia, and it does kind of annoy him because it's her honeymoon and he's her husband, but they're not really paying attention to him.
Well, okay. Right.
But
I was gonna say he sounds like the type that want to lay low, but it sounds like that's.
He does, but it also annoys him that they don't want to pay attention to him, basically.
Ooh, he's a diva.
The private game is happening in the engine room, and one of the players in this game is this jittery guy named Kellad. He's obviously, that's how I read the name Kellad, but he's obviously not very good at the game, and he's mentioning how he just came down here to look at the engines of the ship. He doesn't really want to play.
He a lion.
He reveals that they're all there playing cards, and he reveals he's down on his luck because he used to work for the Empire, and now he has no job because the Empire is gone. So this piques Han's interest, of course. And the guy goes on to say he was an inventor, and he talks about how, he's like, remember this maneuver the rebels used to do to avoid tractor beams? Well, I'm the guy that figured out how to stop that from happening.
Uh-oh.
So he's like bragging.
But it didn't work.
He's saying it worked, but the point is he's bragging about stopping the rebels and things. He doesn't know who he's playing cards with. He doesn't realize that's Han Solo, basically. Mm-hmm. So he's obviously smart, but he's not like socially smart, this guy. Mm-hmm. He's also, it should be noted that he's saying this in front, one of the other card players is a Lasat. I don't know if you remember Zeb from Star Wars Rebels. He was like the big purple guy.
I don't recall.
But the Lasat, their species were wiped out essentially by the Empire. So he's saying this in front of this guy too. So he's, like I said, he's not very smart in what he's saying. It switches back to Leia, and basically Leia and Han, they were assigned a personal attaché for their trip. Riola, okay, her name is Riola, is their personal attaché for this. So she's gonna kind of be there to help them. She's a Pantoran, which basically looks like a regular person, but they're kind of blue. Their destination is going to be a beach planet, but Leia notices they're going to be kind of coming close to this other system called the Madurs system. So earlier in the book, Han and Leia and Mon Mothma are talking about how they need more fuel. And it was brought up that Madurs has this natural fuel called carnium, I think. And they were considering going on a mission there to maybe like convince them to work with the New Republic and help them with fuel. And Leia notices their trip is going to kind of take them close to that. It's a planet that they're very famous for their artwork. It's an ice planet, and they have like these beautiful ice palaces and things. She's essentially she's still thinking about work. Like, what if I could get this cruise to go there instead? But
I was going to say, yeah, she's still working.
Yeah. But just as she thinks that, it's interesting, she gets a communication from the Prime Minister of Madurs, actually, just as she's thinking that. They tell her she got a communication. So she goes to take that call, but it switches back to Han's perspective, who's still playing cards with Kelad, and he admits he needs money to fund his latest invention having to do with something with gravity manipulation, and he's hoping to meet a potential investor on the beach planet they're going to.
Like he's choosing to gamble to make money?
It's not clear. Well,
I'm sorry, I'm asking
it's more that,
very specific questions.
I think it's more that he needs an investor for this invention, and he's pitching the idea. He's going to go pitch this idea. But this person could be with the Empire.
But yet he's also very crazy.
He's not crazy. He's like socially awkward.
Okay.
He starts to talk about how he heard that Princess Leia was on board. And it's when he says this, one of the other card players gives Han a look. Because this other card player obviously knows who Han is. But Kelad doesn't know who Han is. And Kelad says, maybe I could knock Leia out and throw her in an escape pod. And there's probably a good bounty on her. The other player in the card game who recognizes Han, he and Han have an interesting nonverbal exchange. So this player, she flashes Han her cards. And basically she's showing Han that she has nothing. Her hand is nothing in this game. And so Han then intentionally folds and lets her win the pot. And then she takes the credits and leaves. So basically she was saying, let me win this and I won't tell him who you are. Kelad, he then tells Han, hey, you look like you might know some bounty hunters. Maybe we can work together and capture Leia.
Oh, stop talking.
At this point, the other player in the game then just gets up and leaves. Because he also, he knows what's going on. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to stay to see how this is about to turn out. And Han's like, yeah, I'll help. But we really need to plan this out. Can you show me where those escape pods are? So that way we can plan this out. I'm gonna be honest. This is the part of the book I remember from the first time I read it. This is actually my favorite part of the book. Just this little, it's such a good tense little moment.
Yeah.
All right. So just back to Leia, who it goes back to her suite to take that message from the Prime Minister of Madurs, and it's just a short message asking her simply to come and see their famous art for herself. She's trying to figure out if there are any hidden messages in it. And then that's when she notices how big and glamorous her suite is on this ship. And she feels guilty because she's supposed to be on her honeymoon. And instead, she instantly thought about putting on a face for the cameras, about, going to her suite to check out this message and not to see Han. And she's realizing she doesn't know how to let go of like her work. Yeah. And I'm saying work as if like she's working a 9 to 5. Obviously, this is like a rebellion and she's doing important stuff to save lives and form a government. I'm trying to say like it's not like someone who's like, oh, I can't let go of checking my emails. Like she's doing important stuff.
Yeah, she's trying to stop a war. You're right.
She puts on the news and it's talking about the economy and how bad it's going to be now that the Empire's collapsed. And then they show a clip of Leia on the Halcyon, and the news reporters make a snide comment about how she's interacting with other rich people who don't have to worry about things like the economy. So Kelad, meanwhile, takes Han to the escape pod, and Han tells him he should go inside and feel it out if they're really serious on kidnapping Leia. So Kelad goes in, and then of course Han immediately locks the door and locks him inside there. And Kelad starts begging to be let out, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, like, I'm desperate because I lost my contract in the war. And Han tells him, was like, maybe you shouldn't be profiting off the death of others. And then he gets discovered by this engineer in the ship who's this little Ugnaught. Ugnaughts are the little like kind of like pig aliens. I don't know if you remember them. They're not really very front and center.
Sounds cute.
But I like this guy because he's I don't know, I just like his little quotes because he's like, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. And then Han's like, yeah, take it easy, friend. He's like, I know your friend. Get out. Pronto, Ronto. Go.
Pronto, Ronto. That's so cute.
The Ugnaught calls the chief engineer over, and Han tells him, hey, like, I'm Han Solo, I'm Princess Leia's husband. And then that's when Kellad goes, ah! Like, that's when he realizes how bad he fucked up. They ask Kellad for his information, and he hesitates, and Han realizes if Kellad is broke, how could he afford this expensive cruise? So it turns out he's a stowaway on this ship. And he was only stowing away so he could look good to the investor when he arrives on this fancy ship to the planet they're going to.
Oh my god.
They lock him up and apologize to Han and tell him to go back to his cabin. So, as we can kind of see, it's not just Leia who's having trouble letting go. Han is also defaulting into his old habits. I mean, this turned out good, but like he immediately went to go look for a card game and stuff. Like they're both working on like...
Sounds like addiction problems.
They're both stuck on their elements.
Yes.
Addiction problems, yeah. The next morning, Leia is invited to tour a bridge of the ship. On Leia's way to the tour, her assigned aide, so Riola, tells her it's good to see her on the ship. And none of the crew liked the Empire when they were in charge. The Empire used to run like the crews back.
Of course.
And seeing Leia gives the crew a whole new hope. So they tell her that they see that she's celebrating, so maybe that means there's a cause to actually celebrate. So her being there is doing exactly what Mon Mothma said it is. She's still inspiring others. During the tour, Leia tries to discreetly ask about the ship changing course and going to the Madurs system to the captain. And the captain just kind of laughs it off, and he's like, nothing will ever get me to change course. They're planning on going through this beautiful but safe meteor storm. That's going to kind of just, they can go out and watch. Leia's feeling upset that she doesn't have control of the situation. That she wants to go to Madurs, but she doesn't have the right to ask the captain. So she ends up going to this other room. It's called the climate simulator. It basically simulates the planet they're going to go to. So right now it's like simulating all this like beachy planet and stuff. And she tries to meditate, kind of like she's seen Luke do, just to get hold of her feelings. Basically, she just wants to not think about anything at all, but she's having trouble doing so. She's just so worried about things.
Yeah.
She briefly considers trying to use, as she calls it, Luke's force, before thinking it was also Vader's force, and that just makes her sick, and she just stops right away. But she resolves herself that she won't let Vader take the force from her if she wants to learn to use it eventually. She's still having trouble clearing her mind, but then Han meets up with her, and they hug, and she realizes that it's only like when she's in his embrace that she's finally able to relax and just not think of anything. Han tells Leia that he's worried so many people know where she is and how public she is on the ship. And she like senses there's something more to the way he's talking, and she asks him about it, and that's when he tells her about Kellad. And she gets upset at him for like locking him in like the escape pod, and she's like arguing with him over it. And he's like, he was gonna kidnap you, and I didn't eject him into space, like he's still safe. But she immediately leaves to like go talk to Kellad. And he basically begs her, he's like, let me work for you, Leia, or the cruise line. Like, give me something to do. Like, I know these engines, I can help improve them. And he's like, it was just contract work before. It was nothing personal when I worked for the Empire.
He said that he wanted to throw her off the ship.
He was trying to say, I was just desperate. But Han thinks about how there might have been a time where he may have taken contracts for the Empire, but he would have never resorted to trying to kidnap someone. And I just wonder if that was a little dig at the Courtship of Princess Leia, where he kidnaps Leia. But the captain actually agrees to let him work on the engines during the day, and at night he stays in the brig. And Han is like, good thing this kidnapper has useful skills. But the engineer, one of the head engineers, he promises to watch Kellad, and if he says, I'll eject him myself from the ship if he misbehaves. Afterwards, Han and Leia, they're walking with the captain, and Leia decides, I'm just going to ask him. I'm going to ask him to redirect the ship to Madurs. And he says, I'm worried about the meteor storms as a cover. She's trying to tell him, I'm kind of worried about these meteor storms. Maybe we could go to this other planet that's nearby.
Oh, no.
And she gives Han a look, and he realizes what she's doing, and he starts playing along. So he's talking to the captain. He's like, hey, when was the last time you sent scouts out there? Because, meteor storms change all the time. I've heard they can be beautiful disasters. And the captain's like, he's like, we actually haven't sent scouts out there. And Han just goes, oh. And like, just him saying that makes the captain start to like kind of sweat a little and worry. And so he starts asking Leia, well, what is Madurs like? Like, are you sure they would accept us there? And she tells them how, they have these beautiful ice palaces, and I know the prime minister, he would love to have all your people there.
Do they know they're on a cruise ship and like they're gonna bring a ton of rich people to this new planet, like the leaders of Madur?
They don't know, but
oh my god, why would you do that?
But they're not. Leia isn't thinking it's a bad thing. Leia's thinking he would actually enjoy having a bunch of tourists come to this place and bring more like attention to it.
Okay.
The captain, he does say he will. I forgot about this. The captain says, "Okay, I'll talk to the prime minister and see if we can work something out." So they're not just going to show up. The captain is going to talk to the prime minister of Madras.
Okay, that helps.
And Leia's thrilled. And I do like the connection that she and Han had in this little exchange. That he just immediately saw she was trying something and he just played along without knowing why.
They know each other.
It's very much like how they were in Star Wars Legends, like post stories. There comes a point several years later where they're just always perfectly in sync. So I kind of like that. But Han and Leia, they go back to their room, and yeah, Han, he played along, but he didn't know why he played along. So he asked Leia about it, and that's when she tells him there's a potential fuel opportunity there. And so he gets upset, and he basically confronts Leia about how he feels she's spending too much time doing business and not enjoying their honeymoon. And they get into this little argument. Leia is arguing like this is who I am. This is who you married. Why did you help me anyways? Like, if you didn't even know why I was trying to do that. And Han goes, because you're my wife and I will always help you with a con.
The last part.
I know. And Han continues. He basically says, like, you could have told me your plan, and you could have told me your plan beforehand, and we could have done this together, and then right now we could have been celebrating our victory together. And he's basically telling her we're a we now. We're not in like individuals. We're partners. And he can tell that Leia knows he's right, but she kind of turns around and she just like kind of like walks out of the room
because she doesn't want to admit that he's right.
Yeah. And Leia, all she's thinking, it switches to her perspective, is like, I'm just trying to do this for the galaxy. I'm trying to save everyone. Why can't Han realize all this? But then she starts realizing Han was right. Like, Han married her. He didn't marry an ambassador. And they should be partners, like, working together on these things. She heads to, like, the environmental zone, and it's now covered in ice to reflect they're going to this ice planet. And there is a mix of, like, complaints and excitement. So some of the crew's excited. Some of the crew is complaining because they're like, I didn't pack for, like, an ice planet on this cruise.
That's fair.
Yeah, that is fair. Like, I packed, and here's the thing. I thought they were going here instead of the beach planet. And I was, like, thinking to myself, I'm like, yeah, these people packed for, like, warm, sunny, and you're taking them to the exact opposite. I didn't realize till later, this is just instead of the meteor storm, they're still going to go to the beach planet. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's true. Like, these people didn't pack for an ice planet excursion.
Yeah, she didn't help them. It doesn't look good.
But either way, she notices that everyone is surrounded by loved ones, and here she is, and it's her honeymoon, and she's alone standing here. And she kind of reflects that she's always like lived life fighting and figured that happiness would just come to her later after the war. It was always going to come later. It was never something she thought she would have. But she kind of realizes in this moment that this was never going to be something that would just come naturally to her. She had to choose to take happiness. She's going to have to choose it at some point. It's not just going to magically happen. And she realizes she has a lot of walls, and she's never learned to like let them down. And she realizes she needs to at least learn how to let them down for Han. And I just really quickly, I'm just curious, do you think Han is right when he says Leia's like working too much at this time?
Yeah, she is. She's working too much, but he's also not admitting he also kind of like delve into his own little, little dark time, like gambling. But though I do recognize though he did like kind of like restrained himself.
Yeah. He did. Yeah,
like Han is right, and it is a we. It's something that as in real life, like me and you, we talked about like sometimes I feel I have to do things on my own, but you always remind me like, no, it's together.
Yeah.
So it happens with a lot of people who are kind of like in power. They have all that bearing on their shoulders, and then all of a sudden you're just reminded like you're not alone, but you're just so used to it.
Yeah.
So it's just an adjustment period, and it's not like
they're figuring it
out.
They have to figure it out.
And how old are they?
Han's about 30. Han's
Okay.
30 something, and Leia is 20 something. They have about a
they're
10-year
adults.
age gap. Yeah, they're adults.
Yeah.
The next chapter opens with Han, and he's in bed. He's like half naked, and he doesn't want to get up, and he's sad because Leia like walked out, and he's like kind of frustrated in the whole situation, and he's just chucking pillows at the comm unit at the wall, trying to get it to activate so he can talk to like the droid on the ship, and like he's like asking it like what is there to do for like people who are alone on this ship. And the droid like gives him some suggestions, and he's like, what is there to do for like if you don't want to wear clothes?
What?
Because he's like half naked in bed, and he's just lazy, and he's like depressed, and he's like, I just want to be somewhere and not worry about like getting dressed properly and stuff. But the droid is like, if you want like to kind of be naked, maybe just stay in your room. And Han, and he ends up putting on some clothes, and he just goes out to get some desserts. And while he's there waiting for like the server to come get him some like food, he runs into their attaché Riola, and she's looking for Leia to go over the plans for the arrival at Madurs. Han's sitting there waiting, and then they see that the servers, it's super busy, and the servers are all running around. And Riola, she makes a comment. She's like, sometimes I wish I could just go and help the servers, but, do their job because they're so busy, but I know I would just get in their way. Mm-hmm. And she says, sometimes it's best to just let others do what they're best at.
Yeah.
And then Han's like, well, the server could at least ask for help.
Oh.
But she responds, and Riola is like, well, it can sometimes be hard to ask for help when you're used to doing things alone your whole life. So Han, he then gets up and he goes back to his cabin, and Leia's there waiting for him, and she seems afraid to talk to him. And Han thinks how, Leia's never seems afraid of anything in her life.
But she's scared of him.
She's scared of opening up to him. So, Han, he grabs her, he holds her, and he says he never wants her to be afraid of talking to him. And I think I don't think they explain... I don't remember if they explain what happened, but you basically get the impression that they're able to kind of open up that night. Finally, they do arrive at Madurs, and Han and Leia, along with other guests, they take a shuttle down to the planet. This is an ice planet, and it's mainly known for their fuel source, cranium. They're known for their beautiful ice palaces. They're known for ice fishing, and they have these kind of submarines that you can go for whale viewing and stuff. Mm-hmm. And basically the next part of the book is when they're on Madurs, but that's the halfway point. So we are going to stop here, and we'll pick up with part 2. But what do you think so far of it?
So the communication between the two is definitely a lot healthier.
Yes.
So what I love about this day and age of authors in fantasy, or sorry, why am I saying fantasy? In romance.
Because you're reading a lot of fantasy.
Yes. And a lot of the romance portion, it's more just healthy communication or healthy relationships and recognizing when letting go of something that's unhealthy, So in this case, yeah, she does have an unhealthy way of just kind of being alone and how to push away people very easily because that's her norm. But when it comes to Hans, he's just... Did I call him Hans? Han Solo. When Han is immediately just, instead of being purely upset with her, blaming her, he's at first thinking what could I do differently? And now he's understanding and he's communicating you're okay. Mm-hmm. That's what a lot of people in life need, to be you're going to be okay and I'm going to be here no matter what.
I only just thought of this too, but he spent most of his life with Chewbacca, so he's also used to having a partner that he can probably kind of open up with when Leia's probably used to doing everything by herself.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, anyways, that's it for part 1. So next time we'll finish up the book with the last half of Princess and the Scoundrel. That's gonna be it for today. So have a good day, and may the Force be with you.
Bye.
Thank you for watching or listening to this episode of the Rogue Reader podcast. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, subscribe for more content, and share to any other Star Wars fans you think might also enjoy this content. Thank you very much.